Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier. When I write these presentations, my focus is always on trying to make your work better than the rest. So I'm not always trying to address the fundamental things, the basic knowledge, for example. Though of course, this is critically important. No knowledge, no marks at all. And so in this presentation on the League's floundering efforts to keep the peace in the 1930s, rather than repeating what happened, which I hope you're fully familiar with, I'm going to focus on how we might evaluate the League's response to each of the three crises of the 1930s. But as I work through this presentation, do bear in mind that there were always other factors as to why the League struggled to prevent aggression from winning. And there is even an argument that it wasn't in fact the League that had failed the world, but nations that had failed the League. Think about that. I think it's incredibly important. So with my first slide, I share ways in which we can evaluate any event in history, the significance of any individual, or the importance of any group in history. We can use other words, but here are some useful ones for you. And you'll immediately see that they are graduated. Now, if you're making a point in your exam, you must think that it's at least important or significant. Or what on earth are you doing as the clock ticks away? If it ain't important, don't waste your time with it. But there will still be degrees of importance, a hierarchy. So you can see examples that I have here. Important, serious significance, major implications, disastrous consequences. In this next slide, I'm showing again the criteria I used when assessing the League's work in the 1920s. Was there a peaceful conclusion? Did the League impose its authority? And did the League meet its aims? And I've added another 2 pointers to help your focus on the bigger picture. Was peace enhanced from a global perspective? Was the League still a key player in keeping the peace? Hopefully, this will help you with the end game. Did the League fail? Why did the League fail? And for each crisis, I identify 6 factors that I think should be considered in assessing the League. So I would suggest you pause the presentation and read them, though I've also put a version of this presentation on my website, History Made Easier, if you prefer to use that. Also for each crisis, I give an example of how you would evaluate the crisis, a particular feature of the crisis or the crisis as a whole. So in considering the Manchurian crisis, I offer the 2 examples. That it took the Lytton Commission a year before its report was published is very significant because it showed how slow the League was in reaching judgments. The League's failure to rein in Japanese aggression had dangerous consequences as it emboldened Mussolini and Hitler. I hope you see what I'm trying to do for you there. You might disagree with what I've included in any of my 6 factors. You might add other ones of your own. That's okay. What we are both doing, though, is showing that we have thought about the history we have studied and the questions it poses, and that has to earn top marks. You might also disagree with the degree of importance or significance I attach to different factors. That's okay too, so long as we both go on to properly explain our evaluations. And I might do so more fully than I have on the slide if it was a major point I was making. You know, historians, the best historians, disagree with each other all the time, but they all pass their exams. Now, as you look through this last set of factors for Abyssinia, I would add that you can see each of these crises as a stepping stone to World War II. You might think each stone gets bigger, each failing is more significant than the last. There's a strong argument you could make for that point of view. But you can also think that Manchuria was the biggest failing, the most important failing, because it was the first and so set a precedent. Or you might think the failure to disarm was the biggest failing, the most significant failing. After all, without the weapons of war, it's difficult to have a war. There are always different viewpoints in history. Don't worry about that. Make use of it in a question C, and when you're reaching your conclusion, just make sure you justify it. And you can't help but have noticed that I've added a cartoon to each of the slides that I give examples of evaluations. You might want to take the opportunity to think about the message in each of these cartoons, the big message and any smaller messages, especially if you haven't seen the cartoon before. It doesn't matter if it's not the topic chosen for paper 2 for your exam. You're practicing skills, not knowledge. So, on to the last slide, which is always my thank you for listening. Do spread the word to your friends if you find my presentations useful, and check out my website, History Made Easier too. But for now, cheers.